Hello Natroners, and welcome back to another episode of VFX with Natron. Today we're going to be looking at SeExpr and turning it into an SeArray node. We sort of looked at the goals last week. I'll show them one more time. The goal was sort of this, although we're going to actually vary it up a bit and do a bit more. And we left off at this point here. I also want to just point out before I go too far into Natron that I'm going to be moving in the not so distant future. So if you've been wondering why things have been really kind of sketchy in the recent past, it's because we've been prepping for it. We knew for a while we were going to be moving. Anyhow, it's going to be happening in the next month and a half. We're going to be moving from this place to quite a long ways away. Anyhow, shouldn't hopefully affect this too much. I'm hoping, but we shall see. Anyhow, back to this. Talking about where we left off. We had made this script, and I think, by the way, last week I might have, when I was going over cPixel, I might have had the expression window down below my face. I apologize to people. So basically what we did is we created a bunch of variables, okay, inside of SE, and then we created manually created a whole bunch of cPixels and assigned them to individual variables. For example, we have T0 was assigned to this. And then at the end, we basically added all of them together. Now, admittedly, one of the things that, and then we divided it by however many we had. The goal was to make a vertical moving, to make these move up and down vertically because of to demonstrate that this could overcome one of the limitations we ran into with we were going to run into with the tile node if we wanted to make our particles interesting and do stuff with the tile node. But I also want to point out that we're dividing this by 5. Right now we're looking at this. This is 1/5 of its brightness. We have not maximized it. We could always, of course, we could take this and put it back and just add it all together. And admittedly, this is not the best way to get a result. And if we have things overlap, with addition, we will wind up with you wind up with glowy things glowing a lot, which is really useful for glowing, but we're going to want to get into doing some other things. But the more important thing today is that we're going to be focusing on how to get these things so that we don't have to write in all of this stuff manually, and we can get these things to sort of auto-generate this type of stuff. And as I mentioned last week, we can't do this inside of SE itself because SE does not allow us to you can't do function calls. At least I'm not aware that you can do function calls, so we can't make a function that you can call into, and nor can you make loops. So it's kind of, SE is limited in that sense. So how do we go about doing that? How can we make it so that we can automate this stuff? Because in order to make this, we want to do something. And that's where Python comes in. And this is where we start getting into doing the thing that Natron excels at. So in order to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to first make some user parameters. And so we're going to click on this. And I'm going to actually pull up my existing user parameters on my other one. And what we're going to do is we're going to first add in a control, and it's going to say this node does not have any user parameters yet. We got to add a page for the user parameters. I think we're going to call this this one array, ARRAY, and ARRAY. Okay, that way we know that this is the controls for the array aspect of this node. And then we're going to just hit cancel for right now. And we're going to move this up so that it's at the top of our list, so that when we add a control, it's going to appear on the to the left and of our controls. So it's going to be the first control on our tabs. And then we're gonna add a control to this. We're gonna add an integer, and our first integer is gonna be called rows, and rows. And it's going to be an integer. And why is it going to be an integer? Because we don't want it to be floating point. We can't have columns or rows, excuse me. We can only have a fixed number, so an integer makes sense. The minimum amount of rows that we're going to have is 1 row. The maximum, I highly recommend setting the maximum to no more than 50. You can change that if you want. It's on your own head. 50, I'll tell you right now, 50 is going to take a long time to render. That's going to be 2,500 an array of 2,500 objects, which is without OpenGL is going to be really, really slow. So anyway, for the actual display, we're going to set it to a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 10, because I'd like it that if anybody's going to use it, I don't think they should go past 10. Otherwise they're going to risk some trouble. And our default value is going to be 1, and it's going to be on the page array. All right, and we're going to leave it there, and we're going to hit OK. And we can see that as soon as we do that, we create this array page, and we get a control here. Now, this control looks a little off here. Don't worry about that. When you save Natron, reload launch the project, this should correct itself and space out correctly. I don't know why Natron sometimes does this. A lot of times when you duplicate the node, it fixes itself. There's all kinds of ways that it can potentially fix itself. Anyhow, so we've created this. This is our first parameter. We're going to create a few more parameters. I just want to get to the array page. All right, so we're going to add, the second thing we're going to add is a control called columns. And we're going to call the control columns as well. And the reason we're calling it the same thing is because we want these to be easy to access. What it's called as a control, it's easiest to access it if it is named basically the same thing as whatever it is actually controlling. That way, if you ever have to access this programmatically, it's easy, and we're going to be doing that. So anyway, we want to do the same thing. We want to set this to 1 and 50. And 1 and 10 and 1 for our values, and we're going to hit OK. Okay, so minimum 1, maximum 50. Anyway, you got it. We're going to add a now we're going to add a control. This next control is going to be a floating point, a straight 2D floating point. It's going to be called time offset. And the reason we're doing, and by the way, for the script name, don't add a space. For the label name, we can add a space. So time offset. All right. And this one, we can leave it at its default. We can tell it that we wanted, it doesn't matter. We can have people go however far in time as they want. I think we should be good. We're going to leave it at a default value. Yeah, all the defaults are fine for that one. We are going to add sources. All right, so one of the things we haven't done is we only have currently one type of source, but one of the things that we talked about with the particles, or making these 3D particles, was this idea of shuffling around, and we had to do that by creating all this layers. Well, one of the things that we're going to have a benefit using this system is that we can put up to 10 inputs into the EXPR to use as our own. So we're not stuck with just like a little cube box. We could have it be, our particle. We can have 3 or 4 different particle types and use them and have it cycle through. So I think that's something that's beneficial. So I wanted that to exist because that's what one of the things, and we can use it for other things. You don't have to use these, but it's useful. So we're going to add a script called this is going to be first source. These are our sources, so we're going to say our first source, and this will probably make sense later. So we're going to call this first source, and then we're going to put in first source, And this is also going to be an integer. Our first source is going to be 1. Our last source is going to be 10. And because that's all we can, that's the maximum we can put into it, so we can only do it, so we might as well just set the range. And of course our default value is going to be 1 for this. All right, and then we're going to add a another integer called last source. And, that should not be a space. Last source. And again, this is going to be 1 through, whoops, nope, not -1, 1 to 10, 1 to 10, and the default is going to be 1 because we want it to start, if we only have one input, we want it to start on the first and end on the last, which is going to be the first and the last are going to be the same. So we're going to go with that as the defaults. And then we want to have the ability to skip sources. So in other words, let's say we have a whole bunch of things, and I want to use the first, the second, or first, the third, you know, and so on. I want the ability to potentially skip them, and it will make sense. There's actually some other benefits this gives us as well for randomizing. So we're going to add a thing in here called, this is going to be called, we can just call this, well, we'll call it source steps. Whoops, SOURCE steps. And then we're going to call it SOURCE space steps. All right. And this is also going to be an integer because, well, yes, yeah, we can't do between sources, and I'm worried that floating point math on that, I could see somebody wanting it so that it could create more of a random effect, wanted to do a thing, but I'm afraid that if we do that, let me just check my original and see what type of, nope. I went with an integer. I must have tried. I'm pretty sure I thought about making it a floating point originally, and the big problem you run into is that once you multiply a floating point against an integer, it turns everything, all remaining results, into floating points, and SE may not, I think, did not like it, so we're going to stick with it. So source steps. Obviously, we're going to say 1 is the minimum, maximum is 10, because we only have 10 inputs, so there's no point in going beyond 10, even we don't need that to have a dot. We'll do 1, 10. Right, default value is going to be, wait a minute. Hold on. Source steps. Do we want it to step? No, we want the minimum to be, excuse me, 0 and 10. Sorry. 0 and 10. And actually, do we want it? Did I? I'm just checking. No, I set it to 1. All right. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll set it to 1. 1. Whoops. We'll set it to 1. All right. So here we go. We're going to, let me just make sure of things. It's not going to matter too much. Display minimum is, or display maximum is going to be 10. Right. 1 to 10. All right. So that way, what the steps are going to do is, if it's set to 1, it basically means if we change the last step or the last source input to, say, 3, it will go 1, 2, 3. Or if we set it to 2, it would go 1, then 3. And then it would skip back to, it starts off from 1 again. Unfortunately, I didn't want to get into going too ballistic with this for our project right now. People can change this if they want. We're going to add a, right, we want to control here. This is going to be control. One of the things that's going to happen is we're going to be tiling. When we do these tiles, there has to be a point that it starts from. It's going to start from one of the corners. By default, the way the code is, I've written the code, it starts off in the bottom left corner and it's going to move across. Well, I think it moves. Actually, I think it moves up and down by default, and then anyway, what we want to do is have the option so that instead of going up and down, it goes or sideways. It goes. It can reverse the two, so you can, if you're alternating between pictures, instead of if you're just using two pictures and you have a 4x4 grid, you might want it to go 1, 2, and then or let's say, all right. Let's say you had 3 pictures. You could want it 1, 2, and then it would go 3, and then, you know, back to 1 above that. It would just, it's just a way of dealing with it. It gives you more options and so forth. So we're going to make this a checkbox. This one's going to be called, this is just going to be called tile direction. Tile. All right. And we'll call this tile. And it's, we can say, I think it's, I don't know if I actually gave it, okay, default is vertical, parenthesis, unchecked, horizontal, well, checked. All right. That way, if somebody hovers over the control because they don't know what it does, they don't really understand it, it says default is vertical, unchecked, horizontal is checked. That way we have at least some value, and we can see the default value. We're going to leave it as unchecked. So there we go. And then we want to, let's see, we want to add one more thing, right, which is our Python code or our text box. So we're going to add one more thing. We're going to call this Python code, and we'll call it Python space code. And this we're going to make into a text area, a text input. And we're going to make it multi-line. Make sure you do multi-line. Don't put anything in by default. We're going to be coding this by hand, and it'll all make sense. So, all right. So that's our entire control system. And I'll get into some interesting things we can do in a little bit. So here we are. This is all the controls we want. Right. So how do we start doing this? Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out how we how in the past we had done all of our Python code inside of the RGB script and the alpha script and so forth. And that's really if we had also kept our code in a separate text node. Well, what we've done now is we've created the text node, so to speak, inside of our actual SeExpr. So when we duplicate this node, that code will duplicate with it, and we can refer to any of the controls on this node by using just this node itself versus having to link it to another node and put it in a group and then risk that group breaking if somebody were to ungroup it or do something weird with it. By putting it all on this one node, we can we gain access to it. So how do we deal with this? Well, obviously we want to, first of all, we want to set an expression, and that opens up our expression editor, and then we're going to go over onto our controls. And so what we want to do is we want to take basically everything we've got over here and get it so that it codes automatically or sort of automatically over in Python. And so over in Python, or in the Python expression, what we're going to do is tell this that it's going to be multi-lined, and I'm going to actually pull up mine, and I'm going to be just copying the expressions off. And you're going to see that a lot of these are going to look a lot like what we have in our SeExpr script here. So first thing we're going to do is create a thing called tiles, and tiles is going to be -1. We're going to tell it that it's multi-lined. By the way, I want to make sure that it's multi-lined. We're going to hit return. Let's make sure. Yeah, there we go. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a thing called source min. All right. And the source minimum is actually going to be based off of, all right, let's first of all, the source minimum is going to come from, where is it? Source minimum is going to be based off of this. So all we have to do here is I take I've control grabbed or control clicked the first source, and you'll see that when I did that, it's showing this. You can see that when I'm holding down the control key and I hover over it and I click on it, it gives a little C, a link, and I can drag this over here and it puts it in and it puts the actual expression in here. But we don't want it to be using the node's name. We want to put in this node right here. All right. So that's what we're going to be getting it. Okay. So we're going to be getting that value from that, and we're going to be assigning it to minimum. And basically, I'm going to just copy it from here. We're going to be doing two exactly the same. We're going to do source minimum and source maximum. So we're going to say this node, and we're going to have it, we're going to say source minimum, okay? So we're going to have this variable called source min, and it's going to equal this node's first source get, which is going to be first source get is this one, and then last source get is going to be this second one. All right, and we can prove that by just grabbing hold of them. Well, now we're not outputting anything yet. We haven't set this to output, but we're not at the point where we're ready to output anything. But I do think it wouldn't hurt to have something to output. So let's, for the moment, just to give us some feedback, let's create a variable. Let's put a spice in here, and we're going to just call out equals, and then I'm going to put double quotes. All right. And then I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to say return, RET for return equals out. All right. And despite that being there, we're really not going to be, we're not actually going to be outputting the out. But what we are going to be doing is we're going to be filling in out as we build this. All right. So that's just, I'm making sure that's in there so everybody knows. We can just sit there and we can see that if we put in high, it would say, oh, whoops, high. We can see that the result would be high, and that would put it in here. We don't have to worry about that right now. So the next variable we're going to be putting in is our source node. All right. So now, what do I mean? Our initial source. Oops, excuse me. Oh, hit the wrong thing. I want to put in a thing called source here. I'm going to call it source equals 1. This is going to be our actual internal variable. Source minimum is the minimum that this variable could be, that our source could be, and source maximum is the maximum that the source is, but we want it to default to 1 by default. All right. Now, if it just so happens that somebody has changed it so that the first source is no longer 1, we want to update source. So what we want to do is say that if the source is less than or equal to source minimum, then make it equal to the source minimum. So I'm saying if source is less than or equal to the source min, which is right here, which is this control, then we're going to make it equal that control. All right, so it's going to reset this. So if that's higher than 1, it defaults to 1. But if for some reason somebody managed to set the first source to a negative, even though we've told it shouldn't be able to do that, but if somebody somehow managed to do it, or if for some reason we had set it, anyway, it doesn't matter. The key point is that we're setting it to so that if it ever goes that. The next thing we want to do is say that we never want the maximum to ever be lower than the minimum for our source. So it doesn't matter what our last source is, we always need it to be higher than the minimum. So if it ever drops below the minimum, it's going to default to the minimum. All right. So the way we're going to go about that is we're going to add in a little bit of Python. It says if the source max is less than or equal to the source minimum, then source maximum equals the source minimum. All right. And so There we go. All right. So now, now we need to look at the source steps. Our source steps are how it's going to be stepping through those things. So we need to create an internal variable for that. So we're going to just call it source steps. This node source steps get, which is this right here. We're going to be getting that. All right. And it's going to be stored in store steps. And then we're going to create a time offset. Now, all time offset is going to be a variable we're going to call offset. I'm going to paste that in. You can see that offset is going to be this node time offset get, which should be this right here. We set up that control, and that should get this variable right here. All right. So what we're doing is we're setting up the controls. We have to set up the controls first so that we can assign them in Python. Then I will, once we've got this all set up, again, I will go through how this is all going to work. Let's get our rows. So let's get our rows in our columns. I'm just going to grab all of these, both at the same time. Paste these in. So we're going to set up a variable called rows. It's going to be equivalent to the rows. Columns is going to be equivalent to the columns, okay? Because that's what we named them. This is the names of our variable or of these controls in the script. If you name something different, then fix it or rename this. Oh, and I'm going to give you guys a piece of advice. This is really dangerous. I found out renaming the controls, if you rename the controls after you've written your Python script and then you try to rename them to these, you might run into some problems. If you had something else previously named it or set up the thing to the wrong type, you might want to start over from scratch and just copy it over to a whole new SeXpr or node for some reason. I just ran into real issues trying to do that the other day. It caused me endless headaches. All right. So now what we need to do is we need to, we know that we're going to be dividing our entire, if we look, all right, let's look back at our original expression here. One of the things we did is we got this width and the height of our window. We knew what it was, so here we just temporarily set it to what our output resolution is or our output format. But for our script, because in Python we want this to dynamically change based off of whatever our source resolution is, we're actually going to get the output format. So what we're going to do is, because we're going to take and we're basically going to recreate the width and the height here by just simply using if we, in our variable, we're going to be over in here, we're going to just put in width is going to be this node, get output format with parentheses after it, dot right. This is going to get the right side. If we look at our ROD, okay, our ROD is a square. So the right side is if we think of this as we have the, believe this is the left, this is the bottom, this is the right, and this is the top, okay? And so we want to get the right, which is our width, which is 1920, and then we want the top, which is going to be here, not 1080. So that is why that is why I work from the bottom left, is because we can see that we work, if 0, 0 is the bottom left-hand side, then that's why I wanted everything to work from the bottom left when we were creating all our stuff, which is why I set it up and did all our offsets relative to that. It's because it matches what Natron does or what the output format is by default. What we do as a transform in any other node should work as a transform inside of this node. That's what I wanted it to be, so that's what it's going to be. All right. So now we want to also get, one of the things that we also did over here is we created this thing where we got the center point, a halfway point of the rows. All right. So for all the rows, we want to get the midpoint of, or divide the rows in half and the columns in half so that we find the midpoint of each row. And that's where we want to center our entire, our whatever our particle or thing that we're using as a particle is going to be. So we need to create the same things over here in Python. So we're going to, whoops, we're going to hit return. Oh, I'm realizing I don't have Karnak on. I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, why am I not seeing this stuff? All right, there we go. I'm sorry about that, everybody. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to paste this in. Control paste. Whoop. Oh, didn't grab it. Let me grab this. Copy. Whoops. Whoa. Hit the wrong thing. Hold on. I want to get the R and C. There we go. We're going to copy this, paste it in here. All right. So R is basically, we have it here. R equals W rows. We can see R is W rows. Here's our W. We have our rows, which is set up here, which is our control, which comes from over here. And same with the column is going to be our columns, or is calls, which is right here, divided by the height, or the height divided by the columns. So we take our whatever our columns are and we divide it by our height, and that will give us how many columns we're going to have. So these are what our working variables we're going to be using when we're referencing individual ones. All right. Now I'm going to get into a variable we're going to just put in here for right now. We could call this feedback. I think we might do that. We might call it feed or status. I'm just going to call it stat, and we're just going to put quotes in, double quotes in here for the status. And this is basically, what this is going to do. We're going to use the status to update our Python window. This over here, we're gonna this Python code. All our feedback we're going to have from this is going to go out to this, so that we can see information, get information, what we want back from there. So we not only see it the results here, but we see everything that we're generating or specific stuff that we're interested in over in this as sort of a feedback window. All right. It's not what's going to get turned around here is actually not going to be what's going over into this code window in the end. That will be, you're going to see that's going to be a new thing today. All right. So we have stat. That's where we've caught up to where out should be. So out, we're going to leave out. Out is not going to be high. Out is going to be empty for right now. Let's see. For the next one, we're going to do, we need a, let me move this away so that I noticed that was typing over it. We want to create a variable called A for the alpha channel. Actually, what I think, let me think about this. Okay, so out is going to ultimately be our color. All right. We could call it our color out if we want to. I call it out. I usually call my main output out. But I want an alpha channel as well. And I usually think of A as my alpha channel. So I'm going to make a variable called A. And I'm going to put that quotes there. And then I want to, we're also going to need to do, need a couple of, we're going to need a couple of operators later on. You know what? We can deal with the operators later on. We don't have to initialize these here. For right now, let's actually start getting into the actual code and how we're going to do this. So what we want to do is we want to use Python expression, Python loops. Now, I'm not writing this. Some people might say, oh, why wouldn't you write a function, Part Bill? You could potentially write functions. I don't think that it's a good practice because to do this inside of Natron, because every time a Natron cycles through, it updates everything, which means that a function or a method would be reinitialized every time, and I don't know, it just, to me, it doesn't seem right. Anyway, we're going to use four next loops. And if that bothers you, you can try it the other way. I'm not going to guarantee it. My big fear is that that could cause issues because, well, I don't want to get into it. It could cause some issues in my mind. But anyway, we're going to make a variable called row. So we're going to go for every row. We're going to go for row in range, parentheses, 0 to rows. So what this is going to do is it's going to get a row, but that's going to start off at basically 0 to a maximum of whatever our rows are. And then we're going to do something in it. We're going to loop that. So it's going to start off at 0, and then it's going to go to row 1, 2, 3, etc., so on and so forth. All right. Now we're going to go to next. We need to indent here because we've put a colon, and we need to do for column or CL. For call, I'm going to put call in column COL calls. Oh yes, whoops, excuse me. It's going to be range. Range parentheses 0 comma calls colon. All right, so that's going to basically, we're first going to do the rows, then we're going to do the columns. It's going to go, so basically rows are actually the verticals, and then the columns, I believe, or maybe, no, I think columns are going, anyway, rows go across, columns go down, right? So it's going to do all the columns, so it's going to go vertically first, and then it's going to move over to the next row, then the next row, etc., across the screen. Now, we need a way of counting our tiles, and we set our tile to -1. And the reason is that I want our first tile to be called 0. If we look at over here in our controls, when we called this here, we had this called T0. All right, I want this to be named the exact same thing when we write this code. We want it to mimic this as close as possible to what we already have written in SE. So this is where that tiles is going to be. So we're going to hit return. We're going to hit tab twice. Sorry, pulling that over so that we can see it. What we want to do is we want to say tiles equals tiles plus 1. All right, so that increments tiles by 1. So it's going to go from -1 to 0 at the very beginning. We're on our first tile. Next, we're going to tell it that we're going to do a return, hit tab twice, and we're going to do an if. Now, I'm going to say if this node dot tile direction. You know what? We're just going to grab that. Let's grab that control. This control right here is the tile direction. So I'm holding down control. I'm dragging. I'm going to drop it in here, and it's going to put it at the end. You can see, whoops, no, or grab the wrong thing. Absolute frame range. Whoops, that's wrong control. Wrong control. I'm in the wrong page. Array, here we go. Tile direction, there we go. Drag this down here. Sorry, my bad. Go over to the array page. There we go. Tile direction, get. We can just, now that we've got it, we can just copy from the dot on. Just copy that, and we're going to paste that in right here. So we have this node dot tile direction dot get. All right. So we're going to, oops. Sorry. All right, so we're going to get that, and we're going to say if that equals, and you do double equal signs to equals 0, which means 0, because this is a true or false. This is a Boolean. It's either going to be 0 or 1. 0 means that it's off. 1 means it's on. So if it's 0, which means it's off, then oh no, we're not going to do that. Or now this is going to be this is a condition. We're going to set up a condition here. We're going to come back to this. Actually, we're going to be setting up a couple conditions in here, because one of the things that we're going to do is if there's only one row or one column, basically it has to the we're not going to be, we can't alternate it. It's going to work the exact same whether that's checked or unchecked. So there's no reason to have it, and it actually will break if we and cause things to render wrong, completely wrong, if we don't add a condition. But for right now, I'm going to just put I'm going to continue it. So I'm putting a colon here for right now, but I'm going to put a comment in here. I'm going to say add row and call condition. All right. And that might be a little hard to read because it's green. All right. And we'll get back to that when we, because I'm going to show it once we make our first thing. So when we say that, we're going to say if that is true or false, well, just not checked. This is where we're going to set our out. All right, this is where we're going to first set our first thing, and what we're basically going to be doing is we're going to be reconstructing what we have over here using all this stuff, but we have to do it in a text form. Now, we did this before. We have to construct this via text. So what we need to do, and we're going to be doing this incrementally. So out is our color channel. Out is currently empty. So what we're going to do is we're going to say out is equal to out. Okay, that, whoops, not ort, out. Okay, out is equal to out plus, and now we're going to add the construction. So it's going to start off with an empty string, and now we're going to add in for this. What we're going to do is do our first variable, which is going to be $T, and then we're going to do what we're going to do is we're going to be using formatting code. And we did this before, and people might remember in the previous tutorial we ran into issues where if we did it in the SeExpr Python area, we ran into a problem where the code it caused issues, and it got SE got all wonky and so forth. What we're going to be doing today fixes that problem. So this is really going to be useful for anybody who is worried about writing it because it seemed all sketchy. This works. What we're going to do, and this is actually better because we have our own output for both. We can access both the RGB script, the alpha script, and we're going to also have our own output for our own personalized output so that we can send our own variables for checking it without having to worry about a text node. All right, so we're going to do a parenthesis or a curly bracket, and our first curly bracket is our first number that we're going to be dealing with is 0, because that's the first thing whenever you're dealing with stuff like this. So we're going to put a 0, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to put space equals space cpixel, and then we're going to put in parenthesis, an open parenthesis, excuse me, and then what we're going to do is we're going to be getting, the first thing we need to get is our source. All right. So our source, what is our source called? Our source is going to be up here. All right, so hold on. Okay, so 0 is going to be, let's just close this off, put some quotes here for right now. And let's put an in parenthesis there, and we're going to put a quote. And we can see our output. This way we can see our output and what we're getting currently. So we can see that it says this is our result currently. And what we're going to do is go back to our array tab. And for right now, we're returning out. Right now, it doesn't have, let's see what happens if we do this. All right, so we can see that right now, all it's doing is it's returning exactly what we wrote. I'm gonna re-edit our expression and go back down there. Because at this point, now we have feedback. We're seeing what our output is going to be. And hopefully, when we do things here, what we're gonna get into, I don't want to write our, we're gonna write our cpixel code as we go, so that it fills in down here and ultimately will fill in over here. This is pretty much what we're going to be sending back over to our to the other thing at the end. So we want to put at the end here, what we want to do is put a thing called dot format. And then we're going to put in dot format. We're going to set for the first thing, what we want to do is get our we want our tiles. All right. So tiles is our first thing, and you'll notice as soon as I put in tiles in there, you can see inside of there it updated, and now instead of being our parenthesis like we had over here, which is what it was before, now it's saying T0, which happens to be exactly what we wanted it to be over here. So that means that our tiles, by setting it, our tiles is incremented by 1 from -1 to 0. So it's now our first tile is 0. All right. And so our second variable is going to be, let me see. We're going to use, our second one is obviously, it's going to be 2. So we're going to just say 2. Wait, we're going to put in brackets. We're going to say 2. You know what? Yeah, we're going to put it in brackets. We're going to say 2. So what is 2 going to be? 2, well, according to our thing over here, that's our frame. All right, so we need to get our frame. Oh no, it isn't. That's going to be our input number. All right, our inputs, we can see our inputs increment. It starts off at 0, goes to 1, 2. So that actually, if I'm not mistaken, why did I do 6? What was 6? I just want to make sure. I think we had to do source, right? All right, so we want to do comma SR source. All right, now you're wondering to yourself, well, why don't we just use the tile as the source? Well, remember, our tiles are an absolute thing. They're always going to increment. We're always going to have a fixed number of tiles, which is going to be basically however many, whatever our columns and our columns times our rows, or our rows times our columns. Whereas our sources, we may have 1 source, we may have 2 sources, we may have, 5 sources, but only use a range of 1 or 2. So our sources can vary. So we don't want that to match. That's why we've given it an individual source. So our source is currently going to be our first source, which is going to be 1 by default. That's what we set it up to, or overridden by whatever our first input, whatever our minimum is, our first source is. And then we're going to, let's see, we are going to, after that, we're going to do frame plus, all right. Let me see something, frame. Well, now that's weird. Tuple out of, oh, wait, that shouldn't be 2. That should be 1. That's why. There we go. All right. So we can see that when source, that's what happened is I just didn't, I was thinking this was our second input. It's not, it's our first. It's technically our second, but it's our first thing. So we can see, so T0 source input is going to be 1. All right. Next is, then it's going to do frame plus. All right, now we have to do our offset. So first thing I want to do, I would really like it if we do if we calculate our values separately, so that we don't do the math. I mean, if you want to do it, it makes it harder to troubleshoot. You can do this later if you want to, but for the purpose of this, to explain, we're going to actually make it so that frame is going to be plus something, which is going to be, this is going to be 2. Excuse me, yes, I did do the right thing. And it's saying that the index is out of range, so we need to give it a comma. And now what do we want for our next thing? All right, so this is going to be, let's see, this is going to be our tiles. Oh, this is not going to be, no, it's going to be our frame plus our tile. All right, why is it going to be a tile? The reason that we want it to be our tile is that we want to use the tile number as a multiplier. So the first one we're going to multiply 0 times our frame times plus 0 times some value. All right, so and which means that because it's going to be the frame plus some value, we need to put that inside of inside of some parentheses there. All right, so the frame plus 0 plus something else. Well, all right, so we're going to say that it is going to be 0, excuse me, it's going to be 0 times, in this case, because this is our first row. And we're going to say this is where we're going to have 2. Oops, 2. All right, and this is going to be our index that's out of range. So it's going to take our tiles and it's going to multiply, or our tile number, and it's going to multiply it times input number 2. Now, number 2 is going to be our offset. Is that right? Let me make sure of this. Yes, our offset, because this is time. So we're going to do offset. So we're going to take our offset right there, and now we can see our offset is 0 times 0.0. So it's going to do frame plus 0.0, or 0 times 0.0, which means it's not offsetting it in time because it's the first frame. But if we were to have increased this and did do a second row or something, we would get something else. Let's see if this already works. Does this work? This might. I don't think we should do. All right, we're gonna hold off on that, and I'm going too crazy on that for right now. So it's going to do frame, and that's our frame thing. So what's that going to do? That's basically doing what we're doing over here. We can see that we did our frame times an offset. We can see our frame number here times an offset. We see it in our tile. Tile 0 was 0 times our offset. And then we had T for tile number 1 was our frame plus 1 times our offset and 2 times our offset for T2. So we can see that's exactly, we're doing the exact same thing. And that's going to set our offset in time. That's going to set these offsets. All right. So the next one is going to be, comma. Let's go back and... right, we're on X. So now we're working with the positional offset. So we're going to do X. Now we're going to also be doing the vertical offsets this time, which we didn't do last time, but it's basically the same thing. We're going to do our X plus, and then we're going to be doing, this is just addition and subtraction. So, okay, so this is our physical offset in space. So we need to subtract basically whatever our distance is. So this is going to be probably, we need to, let me just make sure I'm getting the right thing. We want number 2. This is going to be plus, 3. So 3, put a space there. Comma space, and this is going to be our first bit of math, I believe. So we're going to do the width divided by 2, but we already have that. I believe we can actually, do we have that? No, we don't. All right, we're going to do the width divided by 2. We want the result of that to go in here. And we can see that that is our width divided by 2, which is going to be, our width is our, is 1920 in our case, but we want our width is going to be whatever our output format is. So we can see that it's going to be X plus 960, which is going to start us off at 0 at the center. And as we know with the C pixel, positive actually moves it in a negative direction or moves it towards 0. So positive, where it's weird that it does that, but whatever. So that's why we're using that. Then the next value is going to be, we're going to subtract from it. So we're going to move it back in the opposite direction. So we're going to subtract from that value number 4. Okay. So what is value number 4 going to be? Value number 4 is going to be, let's see. All right. For this one, Boy, I'm going to just copy and paste this because I don't want to screw up the math here. So we're going to copy it and paste it in here. And I'll explain it. So we're going to be taking the row number. All right. So we're going to be taking row and we're going to add 1 to it because remember, row by default, this row is currently starting off at 0. All right. So we're not on row 0, which is going to be negative. We're on row 1. So we're going to be adding to row 1 to it. All right. So that is why we have row plus 1. That way we get to the proper position. That's kind of what we did here. It's weird. I know it's a little wonky, but that's what we did here. If you want to fix it, you feel free to try it on your own. Then what we're going to do is take row time plus 1, which is going to take it from 0 to 1. All right. And we're going to multiply it times R, which is our row number. R is our row, or is our rows. Okay, we took our width, we divided by rows, that gives us an individual row. All right, so we're going to multiply it times our row, where is that? So it's row, and then we're going to subtract from it the row divided by 2. All right, so we're going to multiply it times the row, which is going to give us or it's going to tell us what row we're in, excuse me. We're going to, basically, this is our offset. We're going to offset it by, basically, the row plus 1 is going to take it to whatever row across we're going to be at. So in the first case, we're at tile 0, which is our first tile, which is row 1. And it's going to offset it by the row, which is row 1. So it's going to move it basically 0. It's not going to move it at all. And then it's going to subtract or half of that width. Or half of the width of the row. Okay. Which gives us the output. We can see that it says it's not minus 960 here, according to that, which is what I'm getting. I'm getting the same output on the other. So we're doing great so far. All right. And then what we should get for the next thing, that should enter, let me think, let me just double check this. All right, so now we need to move on to Y. So we're going to do the Y position, and that is going to be, this is the same basic thing. We need to do our offset. So we need to do Y plus, and then we're going to do our vertical offset or our column offset. So we're going to put in a parenthesis, and this is going to be 5. And for the fifth value, fifth value is going to be down here. Notice that this is wrapped around. In case you haven't spotted it, the line has wrapped around. You can see 22 comes down here and continues on. So we're going to continue over here, comma. Wait a minute, is that right? Yes, comma, space. And we're going to do, and I'm going to just copy it. All this is going to do is our height divided by 2. So that we can, so that tells us, that gets our vertical resolution, which is going to be 540. So we can see it. We can see our outputs, by the way, for all of this down below again. So X plus 960 minus 960 basically resets it to 0. It's going to go back to nowhere. All right. So then what we want to do is say that the vertical is Y plus 540. And then we're going to, let's see, from that, we're going to subtract value number 6, right? Are we on 6? Yes, value 6, which we don't have. So we're going to do comma, and this is the next one, which should be the same, almost exact same thing. So now there we go. All right. So what I did is I basically did the exact same thing as I did here. We took the column instead of the row. We added 1 to it because we're at column number 0. We're adding 1 because we want to be at column number 1. We want to be on the first column. And then we want to multiply it by however many, whatever our column width is, basically. And then we want to subtract from it 2. All right, so we're at column 1. We're offsetting column by column 1, and then we're going to get half, basically subtract back half. So we're going to go back, going over 1 full column, and then we're coming back, or something like that. All right, so, and the result is as we can see down here, we have 960 plus 9x plus 960 minus 960. So it basically resets us to more or less 0, which will make sense in a bit. It's going to wind up at all the way off to the left. All right, so I believe that gets, oh yes, and then what we need is, now for our, in this we have our interpolation type. We're not going to be changing this. We're going to just keep this for the purposes of this at, we're going to, for C pixel, we're going to be keeping it as a, that's the wrong thing, sorry. For up here, after this 6 in the quotes, we're going to put comma 2 here. All right, so this is our entire statement. All right, and that is going to construct this. All right, so the big question is that we have made this ability to shift its direction. So we need to say that we have to incorporate the direction and into this. So let's hit return. Let's hit return, not shift return. Hit return. I'm going to pull this over so that's not covering it up. We're going to hit tab, tab, tab 3 times. And we're going to say, actually, no, we want to go back 1 time. We're going to say, for this one, it's just going to be else. Basically, if our directional tile direction is not checked, if this is checked, it's either going to be not checked or it's going to be checked. If it is not checked, then we are going to be doing the next thing. All right, so we're going to hit return. We're going to hit tab, tab, tab. And then we're going to say, we're going to basically take our entire statement that we just wrote, the out here. We're going to copy that. And here we're going to paste it. And all we're going to do is very simple. We're going to reverse for our output what the X is adding to it. Instead of adding here our row, we're going to add our column here and our row where the column is. And that way, this is why we did the math this way, is so that we can just write the statement, use the exact same code for both of them, and just reverse those 2 things. Now, this is going to cause a problem. We are not at this point outputting this. We are outputting this here. Let's just hit OK and look at what this has done. All right. So we can see here we've constructed this. This is going out to our Python code, but it is not going out to our controls yet. And the reason is we also need to add this little blurb down here where it adds all the stuff together. And for today, basically, we're going to probably, I just want to see how long we've been going. We've been going for just over an hour. We're going to go through the rest of this. I just wanted to go through this part very thoroughly so that we understood this. And so we can see what's going to happen. We're testing this out right now. So when I increase my rows, you can see that, here's a problem. We have a problem here, which is this didn't continue on to the next line. All right. So that means this code is not going to work. So what we need to do is edit our expression. We need to go down here and come down to these. And at the end of this, end of both of these, basically, what we need to do is put in a command that says to return to a new line. All right. And the new line command is \n. All right. And then we're going to go down here and put in \n. And when we do that, we can see that now the result from this, by increasing the rows, is going to be, it basically returns it to the next line. So now it's going to switch it from what it was over here to this. So now let's take a look, and lo and behold, it does. And so now as we increase our rows, this is actually calculating. You know what I'm going to do? Why? All right, for the moment, what I think we might do just to speed things up is we're going to copy this and just leave. We're not going to actually work on this one. We're going to work on this one over here so that it doesn't, you know, constantly update to our view. We'll view it at the end. That way we can update this stuff and it will update real time. And it's not going to recalculate it. All right, so we can see that we can add as many rows as we want, all the way up to 50. And we can see that it's offsetting it. It's creating this whole list of text that we can send. We can put this in. All right, so we can see we've offset. Here's all our X values. So this is creating all our columns, or our rows, excuse me, our rows across. This is our X, which is our rows. And then let's reduce that down to 2. And then we'll do columns. So we do 2 columns. Now we have rows. So we're at column, we can see that it's offset by 480, and here it's 1440, and here it's 270, 810. Now, we need to, as I said, we need to make this code right to the screen. So how do we do this? We're gonna right out. We need to add the addition to it. So let's edit our expression. We're at this point going to make it, and we're going to consider this. This isn't done. We're going to be doing a little bit more, but I want to get it so that we can get actual feedback and actually see this implement so that we can see the beginnings of these. We're going to add in some offsets and stuff. So we're going to hit return here. And for now, how would we add this? I said that we need to, we need to construct. Sorry, we're not. We need to construct the pluses, right? We need to create the bit below. All right, how do we do that? Well, let's give ourselves 2 outputs so that we can see what's going on. All right. Let's hit cancel here for a second. I want to edit the expression. There we go. All right, so we have 2 inputs. What we want here is at the bottom, we want it to say T0 and T plus T1 at the bottom. And we don't have to do it inside the parentheses, but we're going to do it inside parentheses anyhow, just to be on the safe side. So at the end here, we're going to hit return right before it returns the out. And what we're going to do is the first thing we need to do is we're going to, for right now, I'm just thinking about this. I'm going to say, okay, we created we're going to use the variable up here. Did I make them? Yes, we didn't do that. We're going to make 2 variables for, or 2 new variables for this. We're going to create a variable called PC. This is going to be the, basically, this is going to be the previous, the way to think of this is going to be our previous color value, is the way to think of it. Is going to equal, I'm just thinking about this. Is that what I want? No, I take it back. No, I want to do current color is going to be, here, hold on, I'm sorry about that. Current color. We want current color to equal, let's see, what do we want the current color to equal? Oh, I'm scrolling up the wrong one. Current color is going to equal, for the time being, we're going to make the current color equals nothing. Then we're going to make the current alpha. We're going to create a current alpha, and we're going to make it that also equal nothing. And then what we're going to do is create a new thing we're going to call previous color, PC. And we're going to make that equal a parenthesis. All right. I just want to think about this. Is that what I actually wanted to do? No. What we're going to do is tell it that the previous color is going to equal, it's just going to equal 0. There's always going to be at least one tile. So we're going to do, we're going to, inside of some parentheses, I think it's going to be, let me just make sure. No, we're not going to do it inside of parentheses. We're just going to do T. We're going to do, just to be on the safe side, we're going to just do T0, and then we're like so, and we're going to do dot format. Now, you don't really need to do, you know what? I don't think we need to do this. I think we can just do T0. Let's just do T0 for right now. All right, so the first thing is going to be T0. All right. We're also going to make, for the moment, we're going to do previous alpha is going to be equal, quote, T0 as well. All right. But we haven't actually done any of the alpha code right now. We will do the alpha code in a little while. I want to focus mainly on the color code for right now, just so we can get this done. So right, the alpha code we're gonna do for T, which is going to be the tile in range parentheses 0, comma, tiles. Okay. We're going to, whoops, no, that's a typo. Tiles. Here we go. Tab, we're going to do is say that the current color is going to be equal to the, I'm just thinking about this. We're just going to say T, oops, oh, it's going to be equal to, quote, T bracket, we're going to put 0, and just so that we're working in quotes. Now, then we're going to put in plus, let's see, 1 bracket, end quote, I believe. Let me just think about this. Oh, we're going to want to put that, yeah, we're going to put that inside of, I think we want to put that inside of, is that right? You know what, for right now, I think, I'm just thinking about this. I'm trying to come up with do this in the final vision. I'm calculating alpha channel, and so there's alpha added in, and it's going to cause a problem with the math here. So I don't want to do that. I think what we're better off doing is just trying to think of how to do this. You know what? I think I'm just going to do do 1. I think for right now, all we need to do, really, I think we can just do, let me just think about this. I think we can just do T, or T parenthesis, we're going to just do the 1 parenthesis. I think if we do that and then we do plus, we're going to leave out, we're actually going to format this properly. We're going to do format, and then, because we want to, in the format, what we're going to do is we want to have the first variable be the previous color. I want the previous color to be the first thing, and then the second thing, wait a minute, do I want that to be the previous color? Hold on. No, I take it back. Oh, hold on. No, we won't. Oh, good. We're going to make that 0. We want that to be 0. T, so, all right, sorry. T equals 0. Plus, for right, yeah, we're going to put, so T is all we need to do there. And then we're going to do comma, and here we're going to put in PC, I believe. That's all we need. Yes. All right, that's good. Because the second variable is going to be our previous. We need to get the previous when we start doing alpha math, because we have to actually add things together and then composite it in, yeah, it'll make more sense. It just isn't going to make it, it's going to make our lives easier for right now. So I'm going to just do that, I think. And we do need to, let me just think about this. For the purposes of this, for the time being, what we're going to do is say, CC plus, because we're going to get rid of this little bit in the end. I'm just thinking about this. You know what? All right. We're going to put up here where it says CC up here. We're going to just put a parenthesis in here because we need a well, you know what? No, we'll just try it. We're going to try it. Let's see if this works. Let's see. So, all right, we're going to... So, all right, after that's all done, I'm just going to say out equals out plus CC. Does that equal correct? That is wrong. That is probably not going to work. That's probably going to break. All right, so we need... You know what? It doesn't matter if we do T0. So, all right, we're going to do... I'm just thinking about this. All right. So, CC is going to equal CC... I'm just thinking if this is going to hurt anything. Plus... Basically going to just take the same thing, but this time we're going to, instead of having plus at the end, we're just going to end it there. So that it should say, all right, so we're seeing that it should be, oh, and we want plus 1, I think. Let me see. All right, I think that should function. We have 2 outputs. Which should give us our last output. Let's see if that works. All right, well, we can see that it's giving us our thing right here, and so we get all that added. Let's just see. All right, so there we go. We've got that. Let's just see if that how that changes. If I set it to 1, we have a problem. All right, so it's giving us a problem. Let's edit the expression and take a look. Unallocated. Wait a minute. What's going on here? Why did that say T equals tiles equals 0, 1 tiles for T and tiles? Oh, here's the problem. Should be, maybe it should just be tiles. I'm sorry. I think we want just to be tiles. There we go. All right, there we go. All right, there we go. Let's try this again. Row 1. There we go. All right, so we can see that when we just do a tile, all we get is T0. When we do 2, we get tile plus tile 1, 3, 4, 5, and as you can see, we're getting outputs. All right, let me explain what happened there. So the reason that it goes down, what's happening? So when the range is 1, the first thing that happens is that it starts off at 0. It says for T and 0, it increments it 1 time, and then it goes through and it says, oh, we've already hit the end of this, and it ends it, and it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't actually process this because it's already hit the end because there's only 1 at the one thing. So it goes straight to the next line, and it says that C is equal to C, which should be nothing, plus the plus T0, which is going to be our tiles, which is 1, which is going to, or tile 0, which is 0. So the first tiles is going to be is going to be 0, because there's only 1. We've added 1 to it. 1 tile is tile 0. All right, so that's why that works. All right. And then when we give it more than 1, when we give it 2, it'll iterate 1 time, and then it adds at the end the total count of tiles. So we always wind up with the end. All right, so that should work. That should give us exactly what we want. We have output here that looks like this should mimic what we had, everything we had last time with the exception of this, and it's eliminating all these variables. Let's find out if this actually works. Let's first of all, let's bring this down to a row of 1. Oh yes, we need to output it. How do we output it? This is the one thing we haven't done. And this is where this gets to be nicer. All right, so what we're going to do is take this control and we're going to just replace all this over here that we've already done over here. We don't care about this. We've replicated everything we need from over here at this point. So I'm going to take this control here and I'm going to drag it in here. I'm control dragging. I'm holding down the control key. I'm grabbing my RGB script. I'm dragging it so it's linked. I'm going to link it in. I'm going to put it down here and it tells us down at the bottom. By the way, it always puts it at the bottom whenever you drag it in. So don't be surprised. So it says here, script get. That's the name of that variable. We're going to sit there and take that. We're going to copy that code, that section of it. We can get rid of the rest. Okay. And instead of out, what we're going to be doing is we're going to hit return right after here. And we're going to say this node dot, instead of get, we're going to tell it that we want to set it. And what we're going to be setting it with is the out. Oops, out. All right. And we can see as soon as we tell it to set it with the, oh, wait a minute, we don't want to set it with the out there because that's going to break. Oh, we also have a problem. Aha, we don't have semicolons at the end. Ha 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 ha. We need to also add semicolons or this is going to go bad. We forgot to do the semicolons. All right, so semicolons there, and this node needs to be after we've added the out plus the CC. So this actually has to, we have to add the current color afterwards, all right? And then we do out, and then what we should see by reversing those two is there we go. We have T0. So T0, so that should give us 1, and it should do that, and we should wind up with that there, and everything should be good. And so let's take a look at what happens. We're going to go over here, and there we go. We have an array of 1 tile. Let's see what happens when we increase our row to 2 tiles. We've got 2 tiles. Our row to 3 tiles. We've got 3 tiles. All right, we've got 3 tiles. Let's make 2 columns. All right, and whoa, that's looking a bit weird. All right, that's looking off to me. Something seems off. I'm going to just double check it against my original code. I think we've got a problem. Yeah, that's saying it's 1600. Wait a minute. Something is wrong here. No. Wait a minute. Are we doing this? Uh-oh. We got him. That's weird. Okay. What's happening here is we're running into the condition error. I must have copied the wrong script. So let's edit this script, or I botched up somewhere in this. Row, column 1. I'm going to double check the original script. Edit the expression. Five minus 6, yeah. Row plus 1. R divided by 2. H2. All right, hold on 1 second, everybody. I'm going to just, for the sake of this, look at some old code. This is weird. Did I not set up that control right? Let's hit OK, and I'm just checking my user parameters and making sure it says tile direction. So, all right. So you guys are aware what's happening is our tile direction is messing with this, which was something I was going to talk about, but we're getting offset incorrectly. Let me just make sure that is correct. This is oh, it wasn't messing with it. Okay, I think I know what's wrong with it. Let me just see something here. Right. Okay. The problem that we're running into, the reason that that it looks offset. All right. That was my bad. I was misreading it. It wasn't that it was working wrong. What was happening is the tiled animations, the bottom ones, were down below the screen because this is animated. We animated the whole thing. Right. So the problem is this. The problem is this whole thing. All right. So the transform. So the whole point behind this is that whatever we feed this, it's going to tile and it's going to work and they're going to overlap. And so the problem that we ran into, okay, so, this is rendering. This shouldn't be rendering. Stop it. There we go. All right. So here we go. All right. So, we did this animation here last week, and all the animation did is it makes it bobble from the bottom to the top. By doing that, and it also scaled it down. But by doing that, the problem is that what we were seeing is on frame 1, this was at the bottom of its cycle, so it was all the way down at the bottom of basically its movement range. And it was set up to do its movement range at this size. So when we scaled it down, it just shrank it so that it was centered relative. That's why everything was offset and it was throwing me off. Anyway, this is what we've got for our tiles. Let's look at this. Let's go back here and verify this. All right, so set the columns to 0. All right, there we go. All right, so things are working. Let's verify. We have 1 row. We have 2 rows. We have 3 rows. We have 4 rows. When we get to 5 rows, we should have a solid mass going across. All right. If we say columns, if we say 2 columns, we wind up with that. 3 columns. This should only be 3 columns high, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, there we go. So 3 columns high by 5 columns wide is what I believe what this is set to. And we can see it takes a little while to update, but that's okay. We're getting the results we expect. So there we go. So we have, I think keeping it at 3x2, we get a good assessment of what's going on. In fact, I'm going to bring it down to 2x2. In fact, I'm going to do something here. Now, we don't have 2 inputs. Do we even do the inputs? I don't think we actually set up the inputs. All right. I'm trying to think of the easiest way. One of the problems that we would run into is if we check this and set this to one of these to 1, you can see, watch what happens here. All right. See how we have 2 here, but when we click on this, this should be going sideways, and it's not going sideways. Instead, it's showing the one thing. This is actually a bug, because it's not that it's doing it wrong. We can see we have 2 inputs here, or 2 things, and it's doing the math correctly. The problem is that this result is the exact same, or should be the exact same thing as basically this result, which is this. We should wind up with the exact same result. So there's no point in having that work, if that makes sense. Anytime either the rows or the columns, one of the two is 1, we're going to have the equivalent of the exact opposite. So there's no point in having it. We are either going to have something that's going to look like this rotated, or something that's going to look like this rotated, because they're always going to go 1, 2, or 1, 2. So it doesn't really matter. So it doesn't, there's no point in having it. So what we need to do is actually set up a condition that handles it, so that when whoops, or didn't want that, so that when we actually click this, it ignores basically the fact that this is columns, and basically does the original math. So how are we going to do that? That's something that we need to address. Let's edit our expression, because that's an important one right now. We already have it. We already have this here, and I wrote in that we want to add a condition. This is something that's very important at this point in time. All right. So we want to say or here. Basically, I'm going to just say or one of these 2 things. I'm going to say or our rows equals 1, or our columns equals 1. And so I'm just going to right here paste in that. So if we say if it is unchecked, it will do the first one, or if the rows equals 1, or the columns equal 1. If any one of those 3 things exists, it's going to do the first thing. Otherwise, it's going to switch it. If the checkbox is checked, it will switch it to do the tile direction. So let's see. If we go here and we uncheck that, we can see that having 2 columns, okay, 2 columns, and, or excuse me, let's do 2 by 3, doing this, whoa, oh, well, now that ain't right. Uh-oh. Oh, foo, I broke the code. No! Well, crud, I thought I'd checked this thoroughly beforehand. I apologize. I will have to have this fixed in the next one. So... That's weird. That should not be doing what it's doing. Unless I screwed up something somewhere. See to no. That looks right to me, but I must have made a boo-boo. All right, let's see. There's an easy way to test this. Tile direction. We're going to just comment this out and see if that fixes it. So column quote. All right, so the problem with this... Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. No. There's definitely something wrong going on here. This should not be doing spaced out like this, if I'm not mistaken. I tell it instead of 3, 1. You know what? Let's set this to 2, 3. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, no, this is definitely doing it wrong. I've screwed up the direct. All right, so our direction code doesn't work for right now. We'll deal with that in the next one. I apologize to everybody. We're going to just leave it uncommented for the moment. And well, oh, all right, my bad. I had that working in my other code, and it's been a pretty solid long time. And this has been a long episode, just like the previous one, because we're dealing with code. All right. So anyway, we do see, though, that as long as you don't use the direction, that this works and everything works. And also, if we do transforms, let's look at the transforms. Let's get those transforms working. If we do our time offset, let's test our time offset. Let's do 3-frame time offset. Actually, let's do, there we go. We can see that it's offset in time. And it's doing it, and we only have the one input, so it's just going constantly. It's offsetting. It's basically going, I think it does this one, then the one below it, then this one, then that one, then this one, then that one is the order that it's going. All right, and so we can keep offsetting it. So if we set this to, let's set this back to, for the time being, let's set this to 1. Let's set this to 5. So that we match what we originally had. What was our, oh, foo, I've lost the, we got rid of the original code, which I think it doesn't really matter. Although that looks off. That's looking a little off to me as well. Why does that look off? Well, we should be getting something that's very similar to what we have. This is looking off to me for some reason in this, and I feel like I made a mistake in my code somewhere. This is not good, Bill. Not good. Oh no, it's easing. That's why. Okay, that's fine. Right, we had easing in the animation. All right. Whew. I was worried for a minute. That's why it was looking lower than the others, is because it was easing into it. All right, so if we set this to like 2, we should see that it should go slope up gradually. So this is very low, and it gradually builds up. And when we go to 3 frames, there we go. All right. I'm feeling good. We're good. Everything is working good, at least for this part. So we've reproduced basically the construction with the ability at this point that we can at least adjust our rows and get our columns. And we'll continue the rest of this in the next episode. And right. So today's goal was we were working towards getting that, which actually what you see in here, we can do what you all of that right now, because all that was, or all we're seeing here is the swirly bits are the animation layered over the tiles. You know what? I'm going to just pop back here just to prove that we have that. If we pop back to this for 1 sec, all that was the original animation. All right. So I took this original animation, and on the x-axis we had basically, I had gone in time. I had gone out, 12 frames, I think it was. So at 12 frames I skipped out to 12 frames, and I set, first things first, let's go back to 0, set a key on X. Let's set a key all dimensions, go forward. Then we'll set this to, we'll just say, I think it was, what was it at 0? Sorry. Minus 348 was the other one, so we'll say minus 348, and then we'll go forward 12. We'll set this back to 0. Actually, no, we don't even have to. Well, what the heck? We'll go to 0, and then we'll go to positive 348, So 348, and then here to 0, and then we'll go into our curve editor, and we'll just, we don't see, yeah, we don't need that 0 there, and we'll just take this and this, and actually we don't need to adjust that, because at this point it is, although that is not looking quite right, but that's okay. It's close enough to, right, I think that's correct. Yeah, that's looking better. I don't know why it's looking like that, but whatever. It's good enough. We can see that it's offset. So here we go. So if we rewind this and hit play, we can see that it's basically doing a, whoa, okay. Oh, this frame here should be interpolation, horizontal interpolation. There we go. Now it should ease. There we go. And we can see that it's going in a circle. That's that is the square going in a circle. Okay, so there's our animation. And all we have to do is, in our final thing over here, this is our final animation. What we would do is simply take those and we would tell it that we want those to be offset in time by, I think that was offset by, like, I don't know, I think it was 12 frames, something like that. I forget the exact amount, but you can see that because it's looping here. Let's reduce our rows down to a smaller amount so that we can get just see what the animation would look like. If we play this forward, we can see that they're offset in time. So they'll overlap one another as they animate. And all I did was take, but I think I set it up to like a 10 by 10 grid for the other one, or 3 by 3 or something along those lines. And then I just superimposed it with the original tile animation set up with the same values behind it. And that is how I wound up with the actual end result, which you saw. So we could actually just do it by just merging this, that over that, like so. And oh, I think I just set it to max because we don't have alpha being calculated. So if we tell it that we want the max, there we go. And then you can see that you have the other ones behind it, the tile node behind it, and the boxes in front of it, and that's literally all it was, with the exception that oh no, it should do the tiles in the background the same way, but it would take too long to render. But the end result would be what we saw, which was today's goal, which is this. So again, that's how we do it. Thanks for watching. Keep on Natroning.